Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Shout up, just tell me if you can't hear me, although I like the sound of my own voice, so I'm sure you won't have trouble. Right, if you don't know me, there's a few faces here I don't recognise. My name's Chris, G0WS. And come and have a chat with us after, by all means, if I don't know you already. Today's just a very quick. We'll work out which one that is. We'll turn it off. That one. Today's just hopefully one of 3 lectures, because there's no way we're ever going to fit it into one lecture without too many blank faces or confused people. So today really is just a very brief, quick introduction, and I really am skipping over several things, and there's probably a lot of people in the room that know probably more than me, because I'm fairly new to this mode anyway. So it's more for just an entry level really. But and there's certainly things on the presentation where I've sort of ended up with 10 slides on, and then I've had to sort of thin it back down to 1 again. So just to keep it going. But we will come back to all these things on talk 2 and 3, and some of them once I've made sure I know what I'm on about as well. So right, let's get started. Right, what is DMR? Quick show of hands. Who's got DMR radio? Who's used it? Yep, that's good. Who's seen someone use it, which is probably all of you now anyway, or heard it being used. Right.
Heard it being used.
Yep. Right, these first couple of slides, sorry, let me say that this bit is about as technical as it gets. Once we get past these first few, it's all supposed to be easy sailing there, but if you really get stuck on anything, just put your hand up and give us a shout, whatever, and I'll try my best to explain it. Right, so what is DMR? It's digital mobile radio. It's an open digital mobile radio standard defined by the ETSI. Shan't go into all the finer details there, but you get the picture. It's split into 3 tiers, and it's been around for quite some time now as well. So the standard was first published in 2005, and right up to the trunk version, the 3rd version in 2012. So it's been around for a while, and it's used pretty heavily commercially. Which is why if you like listening around on your handheld or whatever, or wherever you listen, you don't really hear much FM bog standard communications anymore, because most industry people are using this in some way, shape or form, or something very similar. So that's, if you've all read that, I shan't bore you with it. Right, going a little bit deeper into the 3 tiers. Tier 1 was just an unlicensed sort of PMR 446 or DPMR, which is an even simpler version, and that's it. It's literally just a digitally encoded transmission and received on another handheld the other end. All quite straightforward. So just point-to-point communications, but using a digital voice. Tier 2, which is what we actually use, the network we use and the system we use is tier 2. It's got 2 time slots, which again, we're going to use a lot of terms here as well. This is another awkward one. I'm going to use a lot of terms that you may not understand until later on, once I've explained it later on. And there's no real way around that. I've tried my best rearranging all these slides, and there's just no way to do it. So it might make sense later on. TDMA, which is a form of multiplexing, and IP site connect, which is how we obviously use IP internet protocol, using the internet and other gateways to and RF links and things to spread this network around. Tier 3, which is what we don't use, but I've got it on here anyway, is a trunking, which is more used. It's very similar to the Tier 2, it's just got all the extra trunking features in there, which is used by communication industry and other organisations. Right, so let's just summarise that in nice and simple. So basically, DMR is a digital mode for voice and data. It can carry data as well as voice. We've not really, some of the radios you have the facility to send sort of SMS type text messages, and when I say SMS type text messages, there's no store and forward if the other person's set's not connected to the network at the time, or you're not firing to the right direction, they're not going to get the message. It's not a text message where you'll get it when you turn your phone on, but you get the idea. And there's other little thick features you can use on a lot of radios. You can give someone a radio check and see if their set's turned on, and you can do all sorts of things. Also, the next bullet there, it's an open source standard, or as open source as standards get, I suppose. With that, you've all heard of other digital modes. So you've got Yaesu Fusion and D-Star. I should imagine you're all heard of something like that. You've probably all got a radio at home that's got a button on it for that, even if you've never used it. But to get onto that, you've probably got to part with a lot of money. And it's, to me, my personal opinion of that is it's not sport, to be fair. You've got to back one of the big players, and you've got to buy a Yaesu set to get onto C4 FM at the minute, and that's how it is at the minute. And I'm sure there's people working on things and projects that you probably will end up buying a cheap radio or converting another radio to get onto these other networks. So, which brings us down to it is cheap and easy to actually get onto this network. A lot of these sets here, this set that I use cost me £66 off eBay. You have to wait a while to get it, but you get it in the end. And so you could probably argue that's a bit, and it's got a lot of features, but you could probably argue that's a bit different to buying the latest D-Star handheld from Icom, or I don't know how much something like that cost you, Phil.
Well, I think about £400.
Yeah, £400-500 to get onto D-Star, and a lot of people would probably, people that have used both would probably tell you that the DMR system you use is probably.
Right.
There you go, you've all heard it now, I can go on. So, if you wanted to just have a dabble and you didn't want to part with a lot of money to get on the air, which some of you have already done, it's quite easy to do so. Right, this one. So this is very simple again. This is how it works. So if I'm talking to Phil over there and Phil's got his handheld, and I've got my handheld, basically, we've got an analog. My voice is analog. I'm not very good at speaking digital, but so I speak into the radio. In the radio, there's a vocoder, which is a posh word, basically for an analog to digital converter. That's just, it's sexed up. It's a new term for something that you've probably all come across before. No different to a modern mobile phone or something like that. So my audio is converted into a digital format. That's the first bullet. Then we transmit that over the air using RF. We're all familiar with RF, or we should be, because we've all got a license to use it. And we'll go on to that one in a minute, how that is transmitted, but we'll go on to that one. And you're transmitting to a number of different things to get access to the network. You're transmitting to a hotspot, which I can't really hold up very high because the cable is not long enough, but there's several different hotspots down here. You're transmitting to a repeater, which is the other end of the RF link, which is up at Markfield, Skeffington, or wherever you may be in the country, or a gateway, which is going to be like a posher hotspot instead of a small low-powered little device. You're talking a proper radio, but same sort of principle, just scaled up. So once you've transmitted up to there, then off it goes into the network to wherever it's been told to be routed to. So if you're on a worldwide channel, and you'll be then routed down a worldwide to wherever someone else at the end station, if their local hotspot, repeater, however they're getting on the network, has selected that channel, that's what they'll hear. Again, won't go into all that and how that works at this time. We're just going to take a word for that one. Which obviously that's transmitted on an RF link back to someone the other side of the world or down the road with one of these, which is then converted back from a digital signal back to audio again, an analog audio AF that you can hear. Everybody happy with that so far?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, this one looks complicated, more complicated than it is, this diagram, but it really isn't. What you've got, you can look at all sorts of bits down here, but if you've got this HT handheld 4 down here, he's accessing the network via a personal access point, i.e. hotspot, one of these things that's in his house or in his car or place of work. That's then connected to the internet, so off it goes, internet. Then you've got a reflector, which will sort of, again, we'll talk about reflectors later. Well, that'll just bounce off what he's saying on that particular reflector number, so that somewhere else, this guy at the top here, handheld number 1, he's accessing the network via his local repeater, so RF to his local repeater. Then that's connected in some way, shape or form to the system. So we've got a gateway and a link to the internet there, so he can hear this chap down here that physically could be anywhere. Okay? And that's the same, it could be a mobile station, it could be a base station, and okay.
Can I just ask you a question, Chris?
Of course you can, mate.
That hotspot,
Yeah, it's 2 there, yeah.
what aerial's on that? Because it looks like a 2.4 gigahertz.
It's just a dual band. Well, it's supposed to be a dual band, it's straight out of China, so it could be anything. But
You know how much wire's in there.
yeah, it'd be a bit of a normal helical.
Okay.
And you're only talking 10 milliwatts that puts out.
Okay.
So to be fair, there's even actually an aerial on the board as well. There's a tiny little ceramic aerial.
So that's for 270, is it?
270, this one, yeah. I don't know what, is that dual band as well?
No, just UHF.
Just UHF, that one, and this one can pretty much go anywhere, but 270 as far as amateur bands are concerned.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, okay. I'll discuss them a bit more in a bit, but because you're not talking, this is sat in your house. I use one of these at work because we know where I'm at work. I'm down in the dip a bit.
Yeah.
And you can walk around and sometimes get the Marfield repeater, sometimes you can't.
Right.
Whereas this, I can probably walk 4 or 5 buildings 4 or 5 buildings diameter from the shop,
And still
and you can still access it wherever you are, and it's full scale, and it's nice and clear, and etc. And then you can put your handheld on low power. Whereas if I was working the repeater, I'd be on high power, so you'd have battery issues.
Yeah.
So you could, if you've got a radio that you can program right down to 10 milliwatts yourself, you could be chomping away on there, rag chewing all day, can't you? And you still last on your batteries.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Right. Going on now to the next bit. How to deliver more capacity from one box or channel. This is another plus point of a digital mode, or this particular digital mode, versus analog. I shall read it for you. DMR uses a 2-slot TDMA architecture. TDMA is time division multiple access, which I'll go on to describe in a second. This architecture divides the channel into 2 alternating time slots. So if you remember a few slides back, we were talking about time slots. I'm starting to explain that for you now. Thereby, each user accesses a time slot as if it was an independent channel. A transmitter radio transmits information only during its selected slot and will be idle during the alternate slot. The receiving radio observes the transmissions in either time slot, and basically you just hear the one that you've got selected, even though the receiver will copy both. So this is a tricky one to get your head around, but I'll just bring up the next slide, which I'll, if you see it. On your left is the traditional 12.5 kc channel. So when you transmit, you're occupying 12.5 kcs, depending on what form, what you're modulating. But that's you. Whereas on the right, which is Motorola Turbo, which is also another term for DMR, the DMR type of DMR we use. What happens there? You can see slot 1 and 2. It's literally divided by time, and you're normally talking sort of 30 to 60 millisecond time slots. Now, if you've heard, we can actually show you later on. If you've heard a DMR radio transmit and you're listening using a normal FM receiver, you can actually hear it. It's on and off very fast. It's really fast, and that's what you're doing because you're only transmitting on one of these time slots. So in effect, from a repeater using one frequency, you can actually get 2 calls going in there. You've got 2 channels on the same frequency. So if you're, I'd love to say that all the amateur bands are really, really active and they're all falling over each other to get any to get on the air, but that's not the case. However, perhaps in a commercial world where you're covering a city centre and you've got a lot of activity and multiple different companies accessing the same repeater, then it's a damn good idea because you've just doubled your capacity there for the same bandwidth. Because it's a digital format, your other benefits are because of digital. So by using the 12.5 kcs, still channel spacing, because you're split into two, in effect you've got two 6.25 kc channels. The data stream that we need to put over, plus all its headers and protocol and all stuff like that, and handshaking and everything else that goes on behind the scenes, it is good enough. The audio quality you get on this system is good enough to get down that kind of bandwidth. You don't need much more. It's not broadcast quality. It's not even probably mobile phone quality, but it's good enough for understanding someone that you're trying to talk to. Well, you've also got other benefits. Your battery's going to last longer. If you was transmitting a normal FM signal at 5 watts using an analog radio, FM analog, when you got your finger on the PTT, you're transmitting. You're therefore drawing a lot of current from the battery, and off you go. When your transmitter's switching, even though your finger's down fast on the PTT, the transmissions is switching on and off. So you're only transmitting for half the time. So therefore, they kind of you get a lot of different figures batted around, but 40 to 50%. It does say on the bottom on the picture there, 40 to 50% increase in radio battery efficiency. So that's not a bad thing, because we all know that batteries don't last the longest amount of times when you're in a bit of a rag tube. So everybody okay with that? Everyone got a rough idea of that now. So that's that sort of time slots explained, which does, once you get your head around that does help. Everything else later on. Right, so going back to, again, a few slides earlier, sorry, jumping around again, is when we're on the radio there and you're keying up and you're transmitting, or it's receiving, how is that signal being sent or being heard? You've all heard C4 FM. You all must have heard that one, especially if you're a Yaesu fan, because that's literally what they call fusion. 4 FSK, 4-tone frequency shift keying. It's the same sort of thing, really. All the digital voice modes we've currently got. C4, and I'm going to summarise this one here. That there are subtle differences. They all use C4 FM or 4 FSK with D-Star, Fusion, DMR. They all use the same. It's very, very similar technology. They've all got the vocoder. The only major difference is how the network handles that and all the protocol that transmits that information. But they're all, so it's a bit like saying, a very rough comparison is, we all use an FM radio, but you speak Spanish and you speak German and you speak English. It's the same kind of thing, really. It's a very simple way to put it. So basically, you've got 4 tones that transmit, and again, this is one where this is 10 slides into one, so this is really simplified. You've got 4 different tones which switch on and off at very high rates to make a data stream. There you go. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. And that's what you hear when you hear. It's hard to listen to that, because you've also got the time slot going on where that's chopping in and out as well. So it's hard to hear it, and it probably just sounds like white noise. It's all switching very fast. But if you could slow it, if you could record it and slow it right down, you would hear these 4 tones and combinations of, and it's that's making up a stream of data bits, which is your digital voice plus all the protocol that's built in there as well. Handshaking. This will be an easy one to explain if you've used the system before. If you're ever in a bit of a dodgy area where repeater coverage is, and if you've got an MD380 and it's set up like mine, and you key up and you cannot reach the repeater, you get a dull tone, don't you? Go duh, like that. Whereas if you key up and you get the high pitch tone, the bleep, like that. A lot of the reason behind that tone is that the handshaking's taken place already, and the system's it's synchronised and it can hear you, and it's saying, yes, I can hear you. Yes, we're in time. Off you go. Whereas if you hear the duh like that, it can't hear you, and a lot of the time it won't let you carry on transmitting. And so a lot of the handshaking is probably a good example of handshaking is if I was going to say if you're old enough, but you probably, without being cheeky, you're probably all older than me. But if you remember dial-up modems, internet days, you're all familiar with the handshaking when it first connects, and one transmits, the other one transmits, then it'll back the speed down a bit till they're both happy, and all that lot. Similar sort of thing, but nothing's really changing. It's just basically saying, yes, we can hear you, off you go. Well, that's a good example. And also built in there is very powerful forward error correction, which is, again, that's another one that could take many slides of its own. You just have to trust me on that with data, any form of data, you can have error correction, which is where if it receives a dodgy packet at the other end, it knows it's dodgy with a checksum or something like that, can spit it out, request it again, start again, drop it, or decide what to do with it. Same sort of thing. We all remember when TV first went digital, and you got the freeze frames and the stutters and the blocks of air in the pixelated areas and all that. Not very good forward error correction. So obviously you want good error correction, so you can actually hear what you're supposed to hear. This is what it looks like. I can't see this very well. This is what it looks like on a analyzer. There you go, that's better. Thank you, John. So you can see your tones there, and this is what a few of us were on about earlier, without getting too technical. When you set up your deviation, when you're transmitting this kind of information, you set your deviation to a slightly different level in that you lose your sort of carrier, and then you just see these tones that are switching very fast and heading backwards and forwards. But again, just wanted you to see that without getting too hung up about it. Just wanted to roughly show you, because that would mean a lot to a lot of people. In that that's what it looks like.
That's so minimal.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So you can quite clearly see there your tones, even though it don't make any noise. Right. So now we're going to go into a lot. That's a lot of it over with now. That's a lot of the sort of main DMR technical bit over. We're now going to spend a bit of time talking through a lot of terminology, because like with any system, you get all this, and sometimes people do these just to I won't say confuse you, but you get a new system come out, they have to reinvent the wheel and call it something different, don't they, and come up with all these different names for anything. So, and you've probably all heard these batted around as well, and they are quite hard to get your head around, some of these things. But talk groups. We'll start with talk groups. So talk groups, or can be abbreviated on paper to TG. When you see lists later on, they're normally abbreviated to TG. Are a way for groups of users to share a time slot without distracting and disrupting other users of the time slot. It should be noted that only one talk group can be used at a time per time slot, and if your radio is not programmed to listen to that talk group, you won't hear anything. Now, again, going back to people that have used the system, and again specifically one of these type radios, it probably happens on the other radios, sometimes your green light will come on and you'll see a signal strength, but you won't hear anything. It won't display anything. That's probably because you've not got a talk group selected that's currently transmitted, so therefore you won't hear it. Another way to describe a talk group is it's a virtual channel. It's a channel within this digital format that's not where if you compare to FM again, and you're on 2 meters, you can go to S20 as a call-in channel. You can go to S21, S22, or you can shout frequency and move to there. With a talk group, it's because we're locked onto this system. You've got to have talk. If we all just shared the one talk group, you'd never get on it, because it'd just be routed all around the world, and everyone would be on this one talk group. Whereas using talk groups, you can there's loads of different talk groups across all the different networks that are out there. You can do many things. Talk group 9 only stays local. So if you're on a time slot that would normally relay everything around the world, to time slot 1 on most Brandmeister repeaters, if you use talk group 1 and keep that up, that would pretty much open every repeater in the world that's connected to that network. And perhaps you don't want to do, perhaps you do want to do that, but perhaps you don't want to do that. If you want to talk to your mate down the road, you won't want everyone else, or you won't want to be tying. It's very inefficient. You want to tie the whole network up. Okay, everyone all right with talk groups? Yep. As we talk more about them, it probably becomes more apparent. Reflectors, you've probably all heard that term batted around as well. And again, I'll bring you up a picture of a layout of a standard Brandmeister repeater shortly. Reflectors, I think we did mention reflectors earlier, it was certainly on one of the images that I had up earlier. Reflectors is more like a talk room. If you've used D-Star and you've got talk rooms and things like that, it's also like what we use in the club as an email reflector. If you fire something up to the reflector, it gets blasted back out for everyone else to hear that's connected to that reflector. So it's just like almost like a virtual repeater, if you like, or another channel that whatever it bounces back, whatever comes onto it. And there's a lot of confusion as well, I find, and I still struggle to get my head around it myself sometimes, between talk groups and reflectors and things like that. Most talk groups no, I know I'll say most, nearly all talk groups have a reflector as well, which is where it becomes complicated. Also, reflectors are also used for gateways and other modes as well. There's, on the DMR network, Brandmeister, you can get across to other networks, and you could even put on, say, an FM gateway. So if someone without a DMR radio and wanted to get onto the DMR network, they only got a simple FM radio, they could use a gateway. They could use FM, and then if we connected our repeater or hotspot, however we were accessing the network, to that same reflector number, we can then talk and go out on that system. Because you get D-star to DMR reflectors as well, so you can come across. There's XY, there's fusion type things as well, and a few other things as well. You could also put in an FM standard repeater in. You could take another repeater that's not digital and give that a reflector number and access that from there, and vice versa. It does make operating the things very awkward sometimes, because whoever's on that repeater's coming across, you don't see their ID number, you don't see the call sign, because they don't transmit that kind of information. You just see the gateway information come up on your set that you're using. Right, so I keep mentioning all these different networks, and there are other. I've not done a slide on all the other networks because I don't just want to fire too much information your way, but I tend to mainly use the Brandmeister network. What would you say the same, Phil? Probably.
Now, especially.
It's the kind of way it's going, and it's a little bit awkward, really. Again, going back to the fact, if you wanted to get on Yaesu Fusion, you have to buy Yaesu radio. It's a little bit disappointing in some respects that the country is probably split up to about 5 different DMR networks at this present moment in time. And how I said you could get gateways across, majority of them you can get gateways to and from. Phoenix and Brandmeister, you can't really do that, because I think there's a bit of history and a bit of politics, like most things, with them 2 networks, and I don't think they normally take anything down that people try and put on. It's a bit of a shame. But you can kind of see it that if everyone gets behind one of the networks, the country will end up all being that network. There was probably a year ago a bit of a north-south divide in this country between Brandmeister and Phoenix, and just recently there's been a bit of a bout. If you watch on the repeaters, on the RSGB's repeater site that keeps you updated on all the repeaters, there's quite a few now migrating, Phoenix boxes migrating across to Brandmeister. Technology's all the same, it pretty much works the same. In Leicester we're lucky enough to have both networks really. If you've not got hotspot, you can go wherever you want. If you've got an handheld and you live in Leicester, chances are you can access both repeaters, because there's the Brandmeister one's at Markfield, the Phoenix one's at Skeffington. I know from home I can get both. The Markfield one's stronger because I'm that end of town, but if you're Sandra's side, if you're north side of the city, I should imagine they're both absolutely booming. I would have thought, to be fair. I know when I have used the Phoenix network via Skeffington repeater, it's got a really good footprint coming back over this way, as opposed to Markfield sort of coming sort of a good sort of circle. Skeffington seems to work well over into Norfolk way, and then definitely up into Derby way and that Nottingham way. It's got a good place for RF, as we all know. So, but then it's always watch this space. If the repeater decides that the repeater's not being used much there on that, it might decide to change the network back to Brandmeister network or something else. Things can change. Right, the typical Brandmeister layout, and I've got to apologise for this slide because it's Scottish. Nothing wrong with the Scottish, but some of the numbers and the information slightly different. But it was the best picture I could find. So, and also it's a little bit out of date as well, but I'll explain that one in a minute. So you've got your 2 time slots, as discussed earlier, time slot 1, time slot 2. You've got talk groups and reflectors. Again, we discussed that earlier. Hopefully you're all not just nodding at me and you've got a rough idea of what we're on about. Time slot 1 is, in general, carries those talk groups. That's why we've got the abbreviation TG. As I mentioned earlier about talk groups being abbreviated TG. So if your radio's programmed up for your local Brandmeister repeater, I think this one was taken from, it was a Scottish one, it was like DD or something like that, or don't say on there I don't think. So if you programmed your radio up, and let's just assume you've got it programmed up to access the repeater, so you've got your normal things that you'd have to access a repeater, your frequency and your other stuff. You'd then select talk group 1 as your target destination if you was on time slot 1. Oh, and incidentally, most radios you have to enter it. You have to program it for time slot 1 and then have another channel time slot 2. I don't know. I'll check if you like without waking and disturbing all the other repeaters, etc. It doesn't route anywhere. It's literally just a local echo. But like I say, our local repeater at the minute is currently locked on talk group 9. Talk group 9 is a local talk group. It will never leave. It will never leave your hotspot or that time slot. However, with the local repeater, it's grouped in. I've got a separate slide for it, but it is grouped in with a few of the Midlands repeaters, which also then forms another talk group, which is 2390, called East Midlands, which also has, to confuse you even more, has a reflector number as well of 4419, which is a bit more. So you're getting two ways to get onto the same, to access the same channel, if you like. So what I'm trying to get at is if you're using time slot 1 and talk group 9 to call your mate down the road, but someone's on time slot 1 and you don't want to disturb them, they're busy having the chat talking about the weather, so you could go on to time slot 2 if that's not being used, and then you can change the reflector to 4419, which we're going to show you how to do later, and that then will give you access back to the talk group 23590. Yeah. Is everyone alright with that? Oh, I'm starting to lose people. when you start using the system and you use it day in day out and you use it a bit more, it all something clicks and it all makes sense. Or perhaps when you see another slide where things are all linked up and stuff like that, it all makes sense. So basically, to summarise that slide, time slot 1. Now this one's a little bit out of date. A lot of repeaters are still like this, but more of the UK repeaters are switching over just to lock talk group time slot 1 to a local cluster of repeaters to form their local area. So ours, we've got, I think I'm right in saying, we've got Derby, Nottingham and Leicester in our time slot 1. So it's ideal if one of you's mobile driving around and someone's at home on your handheld, you can have a local chat, and you're not being wasteful. It's not relaying all around the world, but you can still access it from anywhere in the world if you dial up. If you go onto time slot 2 on your local repeater or your hotspot and dial up the reflector for that talk group, for that cluster. Also, it's got a few other things on there that we might be looking at thinking, I don't understand these numbers. If you pick up your radio and you're not sure what you're listening to, or it's not in use, and before you put a call out, you might think, well, what we're connected to. If you make a private call, or you might have it saved in your memories, however you do it, if you make a private call to 5,000, then the repeater will talk back to you and tell you what reflector that it's currently connected to, or it might say unlinked. If it's not linked at all, it will say unlinked. If it's connected to the UK calling channel, it will say 4400. If it's connected to worldwide, it will say 4639, or it might come back with umpteen different answers, but it'll be one of those. Now this is just a real cut down list because this list goes on forever, and currently there's probably about 1,100 different talk groups and so many hundred reflectors for the talk groups and different things. So this is trying to marry across reflectors to talk groups, which there's no real logic behind. It's not like there's a formula to work out one number to another. It really is just program your radio or look it up or try to remember it. There's no easy way really. But I've got our one down the bottom here, east of England, which is so our time slot 1 of our Markfield repeaters locked to that talk group, which is 2390. Or if I was if I got on holiday to Australia and I took one of these devices with me and I took my handheld, I could connect this up, plug this into the internet or set up the Wi-Fi, however I'm going to do it. Then I can go onto there, and I'm on time slot 2 on one of these devices, and I can just tell it to connect to reflector 4419, which would connect me to the same place. I can chat away to Adam, who's sat at home on his handheld, accessing the local repeater. So these are just some of the sort of UK wide. Literally just cut and pasted this off because I couldn't fit streams of it on. But it all goes down through countries. Each country's got a call-in channel, and then they've got several chat channels, which is where you wouldn't want to sit tying up the whole network, the calling channel. You don't generally sit on S20 on the calling channel of any band having a rag tune. You'll make contact and If you're just stopping for a report or whatever, fair enough. But if you're going for a rag tune, you just QSY off, and that's exactly what you do with this system as well. You just disappear off to one of these other talk groups or reflector and just disappear down there and go somewhere out of the way of it.
Why is the first one got 235 but no reflector, and then the second UK one has got a 2350 for the talk group
With a reflector.
but then a reflector?
Good question. I don't know.
Right.
There's not talk groups. You can have as many as you want.
Right.
You can get in touch with the network and say, can you carry this talk group? We use this, as for here, use this talk group. Can you route this talk group through the network? And they're going to say yes or no.
Yeah.
When it comes to a reflector, if you want a reflector added to that, perhaps they'll say no, perhaps they'll say yes. But there's probably only currently listed. I'm not sure. There's probably only 400-500 reflectors currently listed on the Brandmeister list.
Chris, in 235, the country designator.
Yes, you're right as well. Yeah, so you probably couldn't link that.
Okay.
It's just the abbreviation. It's just like putting your +44 when you're abroad trying to link back to UK. So you put the 0 in, which gives you the 4400.
Yeah.
You can kind of see that they've tried to follow some logical level on talk group and reflector.
Yeah.
Because you call it your UK calling channel 4400, which is your reflector number, and it's talk group 235. And then you've got your chat channels, which are just like moving off to a simplex, if you like, let's just say that. 235, which is your designator again with channel 1, 2 or 3. And then they've gone further, as you can see there, just from this small example, you can see they broke it down.
Yeah.
And this is just, when you look at something, we're a small country, when you look at something like the States, it's very complicated. They've got it split up by regions, and they've got all other things. You can do it by state and all sorts of stuff. It's quite complicated. And of course, what I've left off of here as well is the worldwide stuff, because we all like to go on there and have let's all face it. If anyone's been listening to HF at the minute, it's pretty dire really. It's not been brilliant, has it? So a lot of the HF people are sort of have a quick, all the band's closed. They can't get on 20 metres, nothing's happening or whatever, or it's noisy or whatever. So they'll pick up this and talk to the friend on the other side of the world on this. Perhaps they'll arrange a sked, perhaps they'll meet in a talk group or reflector somewhere out of the way, perhaps they'll call them on their channel calling countries. There's nothing stopping you there, Nathan, going on to Australian calling channel and calling your mate in Australia, and openly he regularly monitors that calling channel. Or he might be listening to the worldwide calling channel, so you can just put it on there and listen to that. I mean, sometimes our local repeater generally defaults to the UK calling channel 4400.
Yeah.
But you can change it, which we can show you how to do later. You can change it, and a lot of the time you can set it on to 4639, which is the worldwide reflector.
Okay.
But sometimes, and one of the big quirks with this system is with reflectors, is if it's active, you can't change it.
Right.
If you've got a bit of a equivalent to a pile-up and a unique call signs come on the air, and everyone's trying to work it, or you've got your call sign collectors and country collectors and your equivalent of all that, then they're queuing up to working. And one of the etiquettes of the system is to leave a good pause in between, even if you're talking to the same person. I mean, a good rule of thumb is to move off of the calling channel, but if you're just on the worldwide calling channel, it's very much like 20 metres. Someone will call out and say they're listening, so maybe a Japanese station, and then Sandra there will think, oh, I know, I've not worked this Japanese station, I'll answer him. So you answer him, you exchange names and your locations and what the weather's doing and where you work. You have a few overs either way, and then you should always leave a 3-4 second pause in between, because if someone's listening to this, you've got to remember this is being rebroadcasted on that reflector. Yeah. And however you're accessing the system, even if you're accessing using a hotspot, if your local repeater is on that reflector and someone can't get in to change the reflector and they're trying to call the mate, they're trying to get it back to the UK calling in time to call the mate at the other end of the country or something, and you can't do that whilst the reflector's active.
Okay.
There are a few ways to do it. If you've got a hotspot, you can go onto like the network, the Brandmeister website, and you can register for an account. There's a thing called self-care, and you can override whatever's happening on that locally for you, only for you, so you're not upsetting the whole network. But if I've selected, well, and I've done this before, I've selected worldwide, and I've got the radio on, I'm listening to it, and it's non-stop. Some days it can be non-stop. Sometimes it can be quiet sometimes, but normally it's non-stop. and you're thinking, I can't change this. I'm trying to call Adam's text me and said, oh, I'll speak to you on 4402. And I'm trying to change it and I can't change it. And I'm thinking, no one's leaving a gap. I can't get on to change it. So you can. It's not the end of the world. You can log into your Brandmeister account and then just select your hotspot and tell it to override, drop that, and change back to whichever group you want. But that's why there's a big thing on a lot of the DMR website, on the network websites. There is like a usage guide. And it does say leave a good 3-4 second pause because it allows, it's just long enough for someone just to change something if they need to change something to there. It won't affect you and what you're talking to unless they're changing your repeater that you're using. But that's just one of the quirks of the system because you've got to still remember we're using a system that was never designed for amateur radio use. We've just kind of gone with it, picked it up and changed it to how we wanted to do it. And that's why there are quite a few quirks. But to be fair, it does work very well, and it is for people. Sandra sat behind you there, Nathan will tell you she's had some really good contacts, and the system works well.
Thank you.
Right, so going on from that. Sorry, I did ask if everyone was alright with that. So everyone's still alright up to now, or trying to keep up, yeah? Repeater working. This is just, again, I'm just working through slides now, no real relevant order. It's pretty much the same as program. We should all know how to program up an analog FM repeater in your radio. I know every radio is different, and you have to read the manual and work out what I'm doing and all this lot. But you know you've got a TX and RX frequency. You've also got to maybe consider programming up both time slots if you're to use both time slots. A lot of hotspots just give you time slot 1 or time slot 2. So you either time slot 1 you're accessing a talk group using a talk group. If it's a time slot 2 you've got a reflector and you can change your reflector. You've got a thing called colour code, which to be fair is just CTCSS, which we all should know what that is, dressed up as something else. So again, that's something else that's just, it's not that straightforward, but it pretty much is. And for understanding it and for getting on air and programming up your radio, that's all you need to know. And talk groups as well. Remember me right back at the beginning when I first went on about talk groups. No, it wasn't at the beginning, sorry, it was 5-6 slides back. I said if you haven't got, if the green light comes on and you can see a signal strength but you can't hear anything, likelihood is you've not got that talk group programmed in as a contact. So it won't, you'd never hear that unless, well, you would if you was in promiscuous mode, I'd have thought, wouldn't you? If you have one of these radios, there's a little thing called promiscuous mode which will allow you to listen to a talk group that's not necessarily programmed up, or private calls. I don't mean private in that you're not allowed to listen to them, I mean private in that is if someone's directly dialed someone else and the system looks at it as a private call, but you wouldn't necessarily have that programmed, those contacts programmed in your radio, so you wouldn't necessarily hear it. If you've got promiscuous mode turned on, you will hear it. So that's why.
But only, yes, sorry, Lorraine, and the SWG, but only if you've got the same slot number and the same colour code.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, that's still true as well. Yeah, that's on a couple of slides' time. Is like simplex working. Right, next one is, I've probably covered this already, but we're just going up to our local Brandmeister repeater. Like I say, we've got other repeaters, but we're mainly talking Brandmeister here. It's run by Sam, M1FJB. And I'll just give you a quick brief. The easiest way when you're programming up your, if you get into DMR and you move to the other end of the country, and you've got a repeater there, the best way is just go on the website of that repeater and find out the information, because they're all going to be slightly different. They should all be set out roughly the same because it's a Brandmeister repeater, but they're all maybe slot 1 might be part of a different cluster. So you're always best to go onto the website and see what talk groups they carry and how that repeater works, and then you can decide how you're going to program your radio. So going back to this one, sorry, our local repeater, 2 slots. Slot 1 is talk group 9 is the only talk group that's available, and that's in a cluster with GB7 DC Derby, obviously GB7LR, that's the one it is, and GB7RR, which is in Nottingham. And then, as I said earlier, a few slides back, talk group 23590 or reflector 4419 will get you there as well. So it's just like having a bigger repeater with a bigger footprint, but in effect you've got 3 in a cluster. So And don't get me wrong, if you're driving around mobile and you drive out of the range of LR, as in Leicester, you would then physically have to change your radio at this point without getting too, there's other ways around it, but let's just carry on like this. To then go, if you drove into Nottingham, you then go across to double R for Nottingham. But if you were talking to someone back in Leicester, on slot 1, they'd still be hearing you on LR. So you're still part of that cluster. Slot 2 is where it carries the reflectors. Echo is enabled on slot 2 as well. And the reflector defaults back to 4400, which is the UK calling channel, but the user can change it. Now there are other things on there as well. You can have, on a repeater, you can have timed changes where the repeater will change itself. Say there's a worldwide sked on a Saturday morning, something like that, Lorraine, is it? I think you go on sometimes on a Saturday morning.
The worldwide net?
Yes, the worldwide net, yeah.
About 4 p.m.
4 p.m. on a Saturday.
It might actually be 5 p.m. by now.
Yeah. So,
but yes.
On the Brandmeister website, if you have an account that allows you to have a repeater or a hotspot, you can set it all up dynamically. So you can say at this time on Saturday, I want to change the reflector from UK calling to worldwide because there's a worldwide net on. So let's put it on there, and then I'll remember it's there and we can use it. Or you can go on and dial it up yourself and change it. A lot of the time, our local repeater does end up on 4639, which is worldwide. Which is you move it to, if you want to use it, you move it to wherever you want. Don't be afraid to move it. Yeah, that's what it's there for. Use it. A lot of people won't change it, or don't know how to change it, or don't want to change it. But that's what it's there for, and you're allowed to do it, so you can do it.
And is that per person, or if you move it, does it move it for everybody else?
Yes, it does. It does.
Right.
On that repeater.
Yes, that's the downside with it, is that if me and you, unbeknown, both go on and you think I'm going to call Alan, and perhaps he's on holiday up north, you probably would have used slot 1 if you were both local, because you're not tying up much in the way of anything else. But if Alan's gone to visit his dad in Ireland or something like that, or up north, and you think, I don't know, he said give me a call at 4 o'clock, but at the same time Lorraine's come on and Lorraine's gone, oh, there's a worldwide net on at 4 o'clock Saturday, so I'll listen to that. You're going to have a bit of a conflict there. There's going to be no resolve to that. It's a bit difficult, unless you've got another repeater you could use, or a hotspot you could use, or something else. And that's the give and take. You just stuck with that. There's nothing you can do. Okay. But if the worldwide's if it's on worldwide and no one locally is using it, then it's a little bit awkward in that, because you can't always tell if someone locally is using it. If you go onto the Brandmeister website again and punch in and select repeaters and bring up GB7LR, and it'll tell you the last heard. And if 2 people are on there talking and they're not on that list, then they're not accessing it via that repeater. Right. So you'd hopefully hope the good operators, hope they're leaving the 3, 4, 5 second gap, so you can get in there quickly, and you've got to be quick when you do it, even with 3 or 4 seconds. And you've got to manually dial back to the UK calling or wherever you've arranged to meet Alan, and then get it changed over, and off you can carry on. Okay. But unfortunately, if there's 2 of you, I mean, you've got twice as many options as a normal FM repeater for a start, because you've got another time slot.
Yeah.
You know, so if you are just both local, you can use slot 1.
Cool.
Okay, because remember, slot 1 on our local repeater is fixed.
Sorry
it's
about
fixed
all the questions.
It's probably what everyone else is thinking, so don't worry, it helps explain everything. Okay, so that's LR. And again, it's got a website, and it says all this, and sometimes people's websites are out of date, but it's between the websites and between the Brandmeister homepage, you can get all that. And right, simplex working then. So of course you can put in these. I've done it, and I'm sure everyone else has done it. There's programming some simplex frequencies as well. It's always handy to, if you're literally in close proximity or you live down the road, you can still use it as per a simplex radio. However, because you've got to meet all the criteria to actually hear someone. Going back to me saying the green light comes on but you don't hear anything if the talk group's not programmed. So this is like, and you don't have to do this, you can do your own thing, but you probably won't hear many people. But this is the UK recommendation for working simplex. So your talk group will be set to 9. You'll use slot 1 and you'll use colour code 1. Which colour code, again, just to recap, is like CTCSS. So if you're not using that, if you've got any of those set to something else, so if you've got the talk group set to 8, but you've still got the other 2 set correct, you won't hear them. unless you're in promiscuous mode, you probably would hear them. But you're definitely not going to hear them if you're on the wrong slot. That's a definite no-no, because you're not even syncing up with where they are. And you're probably not going to hear them if you've got your colour code set to the wrong number. Just like you're not going to open up an analog repeater if you've got the wrong CTCSS tone. It's not going to like it. Right. That probably pretty much brings us to the end of most of the sort of technical slides, if you like. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit now about how to get on the air. And one thing I just realised I haven't put a slide in for is the first thing you've got to do if you want to come onto this network is register your call sign and get an ID number. Because it doesn't just use your call sign, it uses a unique ID number. 7 digits? 8 digits? 7 digits? I can't remember. 7 digits. You go on to, there's quite a few places you can do it. You can get on now to register, and you can just put it in Google and it will come up. And the normal protocol is you'd normally get your front page of your licence, which you can go onto the Ofcom website and get hold of, and you can email it or scan it or whatever you want to do with it, send it to them. And then it could take minutes, it could take hours, it could take days, but they'll come back to you with, they'll come back with an ID number. So you can't do anything until you get to that point. So once you've done that, next thing to do is pick up a radio. And that's what we've got a few examples, we haven't got many examples because we've mainly all got the same radio. But
because they're cheap.
yeah, because they're cheap. And that's what most people use the MD380, and there's relevant different radios. It's the same radio that's called something different. And they sort of vary from, I think I paid £66 for mine. I had to wait for it to come from China, but you can get them locally from UK dealers, and they're about the £100 mark. And they're normally pretty good to come with a drop-in charger and various aerials and odds and ends. So you pick up one of those, or anything like, just some pictures, not very good pictures, sorry. You get single band ones. Adam's brought his VHF set in, which looks absolutely identical to the UHF set. Slightly different, it don't have as much storage and stuff, does it? But it's pretty much the same thing. That's this one on the top left. Next one along, can't see. Yeah, that's a GD77, which is a dual band one. The next one along I think is a TYT 2017, which again, some of these radios are made by other people and got a different badge on it. It's the same radio in effect. Different to the 2017 is a dual band version of the 380. What we've got on the end? Like a couple of different things there. High tier, I think. We've got one of these down here. Pete's brought his high tier in. Very good if you've got a good healthy bank balance. And they probably don't do as much. The build quality is superb, but they probably don't do as much as what some of these cheap radios do. And some of them aren't even sort of analog compatible, some you can program up. We've got an MD9600 down the bottom there, dual band mobile set, which is similar-ish. It's made by TYT again, very similar. There's a Retivis version of the same thing as well, I think. Next one along, Motorola DM4600, is it? 46, yeah, DM4600, which is again PMR bit of kit, and you can imagine the build quality is superb. It's only single band. You can get VHF, UHF versions, but probably cost you more than the dual band one on the end here, but probably is a much better made set.
I think the programming lead costs more than an MD380.
Yes, yeah. So, these are all the little hurdles you've got to. If you're going to go out and buy something like this, ask first. Always come and speak to everyone else first, and just say what's the pros and the cons. You're probably buying a very good set that's probably still going to work 30 years down the line, probably more.
Yeah,
but
I think, like the Motorola's and the high tiers,
yeah,
don't come with a programming lead.
No, they don't come with programming gear, so you need to find that first.
And you can't do a lot without programming.
Yeah, the code something.
Code plug.
Code plug. I'll come on to that in a second. But that code plug's really just a fancy name for a configuration file.
Right.
Where you put all your channel informations and your ID number in, your call sign in. And it's only a little bit more complicated. We'll probably all use Chirp to program your handheld or your Yaesu dual band or mobile set or something like that. It's more complicated than that. You'd definitely say it's more complicated than that, but it's still just a configuration file for the radio.
Okay.
It's just called code plug. It's just a fancy term for the programming configuration file, if you like.
Okay.
Right, so that's that. And then of course, you've also, so once you've bought your radio, so you've now registered, you've got your ID number, you've now got your radio, you've bought one, and if you don't know how to program it, you come to your local friendly radio club and someone's done it for you or help you do it, or whichever you want, how much help you want, no problem. So how do you get onto the network? Do you live locally? Can you get the repeater? Are you going to get yourself one of these type hotspots? So let's have a very quick look at hotspots. So hotspot's just a personal low power simplex device. Although you can get full duplex ones as well, to be fair. I'm messing around with one at the minute, which all intents acts like a repeater. You've got both time slots and you program your radio up the same, but it's still only just a little personal device. They connect with we've got both these two different ones here plugged into the Ethernet ports there, but you probably can. Shark RF got Wi-Fi as well?
No,
Blind.
just wired.
Just wires, but if you've got like a homemade thing like this, if you've got Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi or whatever else you're using, you can access that way. Although it can be a little bit of a nuisance when you come to take it on holiday with you and you've got to try and find a way to enter the Wi-Fi stuff in. You just always put a cable in your bag and just plug it in the back. It's probably a lot easier. Also probably a bit more reliable as well using a cable, because you don't have the latency time that you can have with Wi-Fi's another RF link, and you have latency issues with that and all different manner of issues with that, although it's pretty good, but a cable one removes that need for that. There's various different commercial ones around. Phil's been good enough to bring in this Shark RF open spot. You've probably heard of DD4 minis. It's like a little dongle that can plug in.
I couldn't find mine.
It's that small, Phil's lost it. But it's like a little pen drive, like a little memory stick that you plug in. So if you take your laptop on holiday, you just plug it in that and off you go. Many different ways. I've even spoke to people on the DMR network that run these kind of things, an hotspot in the van or the car, excuse me, sorry, plugged into the mobile phone and accessing the internet that way. So in effect you're mobile even though you're not mobile. You can also go back. I couldn't find a picture of one to go on that slide actually. I don't know if you've ever come across one, Phil, but you can come across a network radio. It's called a network radio. It's got no RF element in it.
Yeah.
It looks like a radio, it's got a microphone, it's got the screen, you can select your channels, you program it, but all it's got on it is an Ethernet port or a Wi-Fi. So I spoke to a few people that put one of them in the car, so for all intents and purposes it looks like a radio, it feels like a radio, and then they just they put their phone on as a personal hotspot.
That's right, yeah.
Or cable it in and plug it in, and that gives them the internet and off they go. And you get the purists argue saying that's not amateur radio. You're always going to come across this one, there's no RF involved. And there is RF involved because you got mobile Wi-Fi there, haven't you? So there's probably a lot of RF involved, but it gets you onto the system, and that's probably what it's all about. It's a busy system, it's a good system. It doesn't matter how you get on it because there's still plenty of RF going on everywhere else. So here's a picture of there's the. I bet yours would have looked something similar to that. Would it feel similar-ish in size a bit? You get generic ones, there's umpteen different companies put them out, you can build your own. And I probably wouldn't, I don't know about the Shark, that's multi-mode as well, is it? D-Star, yeah. Most of them now come multi-mode as well, so if you've got a Fusion radio, or a D-Star radio, and no local repeater, then you can program one of these up to allow it, so if you've got a Fusion handheld, you can use that into the system as well, DMR or whatever, yeah. Multi-mode. The ones I've built so far, I've built a couple, they get a bit confused if you select everything and leave everything on. If you have DMR and D-Star and Fusion, you turn everything on, you think, oh great, but then it starts tripping over itself because it's quite complicated. But it takes seconds to go on the internet and go in and change it, so you can turn your DMR off and put your Fusion on and use your Fusion radio, then later on switch back over and do as you will. Again, price-wise, these things range from, well, if you was that one I built there, you're probably talking about £60 if you're to buy the Pi, the memory card, and the actual radio board. It'd be circa £60. Shark, I don't know what Shark RF is nowadays.
80, something like that.
80,
90.
They can vary, can't you? You can spend a good few £100 on one as well, can't you? To be fair, there's all different manner of things. Right, so that concludes pretty much everything. Now we're just going to go on about. Going to do a few demonstrations and everything. We'll probably just have quick leg stretch. I think I could do with a drink, and then we'll come back and we're just going to do a few demos on actually using the MD380. I'm sorry if you've got a different radio or plan on getting a different radio. The principle's going to be around about the same as to how you do things and why you do things. Or you can have a go tonight on that radio. So.
Something that I've learned is that I was looking at the both end ones, but apparently
That's
they're
not
in
tier 2.
tier 1.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yeah,
you
don't
need
do it.
tier
Yeah.
2.
No.
They claim tier 2 upgrade, but,
Yeah.
but nobody's ever seen it.
I spoke to someone a couple of months back on one, and he was actually claiming exactly the same thing that Phil said, and he was talking on a worldwide reflector, a UK reflector on slot 2 on LR,
Yeah.
and he said, "Oh no, it's all right. It's the new version. It's 2-tier version."
But it's not.
I flipped across to slot 1. I could hear him on slot 1 and slot 2. So I had to go in, unfortunately, and tell him you shouldn't really be using that because you're tying up both slots of the repeater. So,
Yeah.
so he was all right about it, and he said, "No worries, I'll sling it down by an
anything other than a
MD380."
both ender.
Yes. Well, make sure it is tier 2 compatible.
Well, just Balfour have got an RT5 on, and it was a DM5 on that was the problem.
Yes.
They've got an RT5 on now, where they claim that that's tier 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not seen one.
Not seen it.
Americans are banned. Remember, you've got an ID number.
Yeah.
If you prat around on this system, and I don't mean in a bad way. If I do mean in a bad way. Some people might abuse the system. That ID number is linked to your call sign because you provided your paperwork saying that this is my call sign, and they will just buy you from the system.
That's
When
another thing I'm not too sure on, because do you have to register per digital mode? So say like Alan's got D-Star, would he have to register with
D-Star?
Icon?
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
you do.
D-Star,
Yes,
and
you do. It's completely
if you
different.
wanted
Yeah.
DMR, you'd have to
No,
register
completely
with
different.
another
Yeah, you do.
number.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, D-Star's more confusing because that's generally you register with each repeater, because you can talk locally on any repeater, but it will only broadcast your traffic up to another reflector
Once
if
you
you're
join
registered on that
Once
repeater.
you join that other one. Yeah.
Basically, it's a way of getting
forever.
money
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
Because I've been at the receiving end of abuse when my brother and I first got the 2 open spots. Of course, we hadn't realised that we both got them set to the same frequency. So as soon as I started transmitting, it just got a loop, and somebody came on and said, "Let's do a VSV. Stop." Sorry.
Yeah. It can happen. Yeah, it can happen. I did it the other day. I'd got a full duplex slot 1 and 2 hotspot that I've been messing around with, and I'd selected them both to talk group 9, keyed up on 1. Of course, it just makes an infinite loop, so I just quickly pull the power out quick. Yeah, that's the quickest way. If I was just jamming up something somewhere, someone will come. And I've actually heard someone, when I've been at home and I put the set on the side and I'm washing up or something, and I've heard someone just come on and not know that it's. You can kind of tell because it's not like a carrier. It's not even like feedback, but it's like a continuous loop, and the call sign comes up, and you're like, they're not talking or anything, but obviously they've done something similar to what I did, and they've made like an infinite loop. That's why you have a timeout. Just like most repeaters, you'll have a timeout, and they'll never remove the timeout because of something like that. If you do jam up something somewhere, it's eventually going to stop at some point because of the timeout.
Come on, time out.
Yeah, let's time out now. So let's get a drink and come back in 15, 20 minutes or something. Use some of these.
I've got a shoot, it's not being moved.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
If I ever get one, I'll have to go to
But anyway, thank you. You've actually